Our next speaker will be in person, Mathieu, I'm probably going to pronounce your name wrong, Isidro? Okay, Communications and Outreach for the IAUS CPS.
Okay. I actually feel really inadequate speaking now because we've just heard some really, really interesting talks. And I'm going to talk about much more mundane and trivial things like communications and branding and products and social media. So yeah, I feel a little uncomfortable standing in front of you now. I'll try to be short because I think we're running a little bit over time. But actually, hopefully, what I'm going to talk about connects to what's been talked about before, about the importance of community engagement, about the importance of powerful narratives, about the importance of working with indigenous communities. So you'll see that thread, hopefully, through some of my, some of my slides and engaging with the public, even though the sort of focus is more on how we operate as the CPS. So really, I think what I think the way to approach this talk is as a follow-up to Piero's talk earlier this morning, which was about the structure of the CPS and how we operate and what we do. And this talk is really about how we work to communicate that. So without further ado, I'll proceed with that. So I'm Mathieu Isidro. I'm the Communications and Outreach Lead for the CPS. That's a part-time position, and in the daytime, I'm the Communications and Outreach Manager for the Square Kilometre Array Observatory based in the UK at the George Bank Observatory. So talking about resourcing, because I think this is really important to sort of frame the following slides and sort of explain the sort of very, very limited resources we work with. And really, as Piero highlighted this morning, a lot of this work is volunteer work, is people putting in extra time over and beyond their daytime to try and, get the message across. So we started last year with sort of limited in-kind support from both of the host institutions, Noir Lab and the SKAO. And then earlier this year, we created a 0.2 FTE position, which is the position that I hold in May as a comms and outreach lead for the CPS, which is basically a coordinating activity to try and work with everyone that's involved in the CPS. So that's since May, that's 4 months. So everything I talk about in the following slides is sort of part of that. And we also have some in-kind support from Noir Lab, basically for web and content production, and some support from SKAO for social media channels and graphic design and brand work and video work and so on. And in fact, you'll see one of my colleagues here this week doing some filming as part of that. So all of this support provided by Noir Lab and SKAO is in-kind support to the CPS. And then the good news is in theory, in early 2024, we'll have an additional 0.5 FTE at SKAO working for me to help with additional communications activities. So we'll have a little bit more resourcing. But basically, when you take it all together, it's 1.5 FTE more or less to do all of this. So what do we do? I'll give you some examples. And again, this is, I do apologize, this is very mundane communications work. But yeah, hopefully you'll see some of the ultimate goals behind it. This is a summary of the sort of current activities that we're doing. It's very, very basic stuff. When we're setting up the center, you're setting up a new office and you have to design and develop everything that goes with that, and the branding is a big part of that. So that's something that we've been working on a lot. You're all familiar with the IAUS CPS word, and that's something that we worked on, and you're hopefully familiar with the logo, which is also something that we worked on last year. And then there's a whole suite of products that sort of flow from that we're meant to be producing, that we're working on at the moment. So you'll see more of those things come out. I was due to have this pop-up banner, which I designed a few weeks ago, and these CPS pins here, but my luggage was lost in Barcelona. So unfortunately, you'll have to wait for your CPS pins hopefully they'll get here before the end of the week. One of the big things we're meant to do is to support the specific hub activities with communications, and so I'll give some examples in the following slides of how we're trying to do that. We also participate in a small selection of key events, and we do some occasional outreach on the topic of dark and quiet skies. And then a big part of the work, as you've heard earlier this morning, part of the role of the CPS is also to sort of gather and produce visuals and resources for wider use. So this is something where the communications function can really help. And one of the things that I think is particularly interesting to these conversations we've been having today is about developing strategic partnerships with specific groups and people we could work with, and I'll give you an example of that a little bit later on. And one of the big things on my to-do list, it's in italics because I haven't done it yet, is something that Piero flagged earlier this morning, is that we really must do some work on the CPS website. So that's very high on my to-do list to update that. And again, it's meant to be a repository of content and information, a one-stop shop where the community can go and find resources and things they can use. So branding, I won't spend too much on that, but basically, this was the first stop, if you like, for us. New office, it needs an identity, and just to make the point that that doesn't really operate in a vacuum. We're an IAU center, and there are existing IAU offices, and so part of the work was to design that in respecting previous offices, IAU offices. So you can see the Office of Astronomy for Development, the Office for Astronomy Outreach, and the Office of Astronomy for Education. So they're offices that we want to be building closer links with to help with the work of the CPS in engaging communities. One of the big things we do, obviously, is media relations support for CPS development, for research and publications. So you can see some of the news items we published over the past few months on the right. So that covers everything from our participation, or at least the participation of several stakeholders, the IAU, ISO, and SKO in Coprios in June of this year. That covers things like the G7 ministerial statements that came out with, for the first time, expressing support for coordination on dark and quiet skies. A very important paper that came out earlier this year, work done by Federico and colleagues, was on detecting Starlink using LOFAR. And you can see some of the news items there that came out in space.com. And actually that sort of, we tend to look at media as influencers, if you like, because that has a ripple effect. So you might work with a few select, very involved members of the media who are following this issue, and other media will then pick it up. So actually most of the articles there, The Independent, Fox Business was a very big one, and even the Daily Mail, they all sort of responded to seeing the news out there and decided to cover it. So that's part of what we do. And then another one that I'll just plug, which is due out in 30 minutes, so I'll need to be back on my laptop, is the Blue Walker 3 observations that colleagues who are involved in the CPS have been doing. So stay tuned for that. I think we'll hear more about that tomorrow. Social media is a big part of what we do. We engage on several social media channels. Cassandra, who's here, is our social media voice. And one of the things we tend to do is to produce dedicated content. So for those of you who are very familiar with your social media, that tends to be threads. Because we realize that people actually appreciate the voice of the CPS as a place to go for information. So we share quite in-depth news, with the community, and people respond quite well. And one of the other things we do on social media is we capitalize on awareness campaigns. So in May, for example, there was an awareness month on dark and quiet skies. That wasn't led by us, but it's something that we got involved in, obviously. It was a really good opportunity to communicate on the work of the CPS. And one of the other things, and I say this for many of you who are involved in research in the field, there's what we call on social media thought leadership, which is a fancy word to basically say, you're experts, you're considered experts in what you're working on, and people appreciate your opinion and your views on topics that you're involved in. So don't hesitate to use that voice, on the social media channels that you're involved on, because people respect that. And we've heard earlier today that astronomers have got a very, very high profile and are very respected, generally speaking. So it's something you can use in terms of communications. And again, we go back to this idea of narrative. Another thing we do is a lot of stakeholder engagement, so mostly in professional circles at the moment. That includes participation at UN COPIOS. You can see the picture there with Piero, with Connie, with Andy Williams from the Policy Hub and myself. And then at the European Astronomical Society annual meeting this summer, where Connie and Federico were there, and there was a CPS session. So one of the things we do, because we're very small and we're very limited in resources, is we piggyback on our host institutions' presence at such events. So where NOALAB goes, we go. Where SKO goes, we go. Where the IAUS is, we tend to be. So we try to capitalize on that, basically, to extend our presence. Something that I'll mention, that I'll plug, which I was not involved with and I think is amazing, is the educational videos, SatCons 101, that Jessica and John were working on. That's exactly the type of content that we want to have more of and that we want to be producing. So you've got 8 training modules that are available online, that are free to use, and they introduce key concepts behind satellite constellations in a very, very accessible way. So they're a really great tool in terms of education and outreach, and they're available on the website. You can use them in your activities. Now, this is something I'd like to spend a little bit of time on because it sort of touches upon community engagement and sustainability, and talking about the environment and low Earth orbit as a near Earth environment. So one of the things we've done is partner with a fairly renowned photographer called Max Alexander, who I believe will be here later this week, maybe from tomorrow, on an exhibition that he's developed called Our Fragile Space, which is about space sustainability and is about the mitigating the threat from space debris and from satellite constellations. So it's a really fantastic piece of work that he's been working on for a few years, and that sort of travels around the world to be exhibited. And I believe we have a few pieces here that you'll be able to see later this week. So one of the things we did is to essentially to help him, to provide him some funding and some support to bring the exhibition to COPIOS in June of this year, to have an opportunity to engage stakeholders at COPIOS and representatives from member delegations, which was a really, really quite unique opportunity. And you can see there the photo of the artworks in what's called the Rotunda, which is the entrance to the UN building in Vienna. So there's about 5,000 UN employees and representatives from 180 countries that go through there every day, and that was up there for a full week. So a really, really good opportunity. You can see Piero giving the introduction there in the middle. And then one of the other things we did, so that's sort of professional engagement, we also supported him in bringing the exhibition to the Jodrell Bank Observatory over the summer. And so every summer at Jodrell Bank, there's a huge science and art festival called Blue Dot, which brings together music and science talks. And that sees about 10,000 people, 15,000 people over the weekend. So we made sure that the exhibition was there, that people had access to it. Federico gave a talk on dark and quiet skies. So again, it's about engaging the public with this topic, with this issue, raising awareness of this issue, and particularly the element of sustainability is an important one in that exhibition, right? And in talking about this as an environmental issue that we need to pay attention to. We also happen to have the SKO's Governing Council, which is the sort of 16 member countries, representatives from the governments that are involved in the SKO Observatory, happened to be there in July for a meeting. So, of course, we made sure to show them the exhibition and tell them a little bit more about this work to raise awareness. Now, there's some really exciting discussions with Max going on about bringing that exhibition to the IAU General Assembly next year. And there's also some discussions going on with him about how the exhibition might represent indigenous voices. So that's a really interesting area of work that Max is keen to get into, that we're discussing. And again, that goes back to some of the earlier conversations today, where it's really, really important to have those conversations. So that's really it. I'll just whiz through. How much time have I got left? 5 minutes? Yeah. Right, okay. I'll whiz through the sort of ideas and the plans for the next few months. And this is really just to, these are just ideas. And really what I want to do this week, and the reason I'm here, is to talk to all of you and to get ideas from you, about what we might be doing, what we've forgotten, what we should be doing. So don't hesitate to come up to me and with suggestions. So some of the big things happening the CPS is involved in is, of course, participating in conferences and events, both professional and public. New IAU CPS research and publications that are going to come out over the next few months, position papers, particularly any regulatory and political developments that are happening internationally that we need to cover or that we need to have a response to, producing new materials and resources, more media and outreach interventions, and widening our engagement to different communities. So it's a very ambitious list of things to do with 1.5 FTE, but we'll try and do our best on that. And so on some of the events that we've identified where we might want to be at and have a presence, there's an IAU symposium taking place in Addis Ababa in November, where, in fact, both Connie and Antonia are keynote speakers, I believe. There is the next COPIOS STSC meeting in February in Vienna. There's the big industry satellite conference in Washington, D.C. in March. And, of course, the IAU General Assembly, where the CPS will have a major presence in August of next year. So that's a small list of events. You might have some other ones where you're like, well, what about this one? Maybe you should be there. Please come and tell me about it. I want to hear about it and see, what we can do. And so really, to finish my talk, all of this is to say, I need you. I desperately need you. We need resources to develop material. Now, that can be to develop images, that can be to develop videos, maybe even to develop virtual reality. That would be fantastic. That would really help with that narrative to convey that message to audiences. It's really important that we have open source license wherever possible, because our job is to disseminate material and to make it really, really easy for people to use material. So it's important for us to have the ability to use and to disseminate that material. Information exchange, please tell us what you're working on. I'm really interested in all of the talks this week. Many of you are members of the different CPS hubs. I want to hear from you. If there's things you're publishing or that you're active in, let me know about it. We're really keen to have, to know about what you're working on. And we also need support from your press offices in your different institutes when you're publishing research that involves the CPS to help, again, spread the word. Partnerships like the ones we have with Max Alexander and some other partnerships that we might develop. So again, if you've got ideas, that'd be really great. So to finish, if you have got ideas of events we should be at, of material we should develop, of things we should consider, of communities we should speak to and ways to engage with them, and most importantly, of resources if you have them, let's talk this week. I'm here all week and I want to hear from you, and thank you very much for the opportunity to give an update about our comms and outreach activities. Thank you.